Incel, clap your hand. If you are an incel, clap your hand. What's going on, y'all? It's your boy DD back at it with another one, man. So today in this video, we got the demographic cause of the incel crisis. I mean, we have a scientific approach to this instead of just, because, let's be real, like the incel word's kind of played out. It just gets thrown around regularly. So pretty much if just like a girl doesn't agree with you, like, because it's not guys calling other guys incels. It's usually girls calling guys incels. And if you just disagree with them or some whatever, or they just throw out incel or whatnot. So, yeah. So the word doesn't have that much meaning, but let's figure out why demographically is the cause of the whole incel crisis. I'm curious.
A lot has been said about the massive crisis of relationships between men and women, ravaging the Western world and, quite possibly, many other regions as well. Rising rates of sexlessness for both sexes, but most predominantly for young males, and rising amounts of people living single, and thus most often childless, are undoubtedly one of the factors contributing to the demographic low fertility crisis. The mentioned causes are usually culturally determined, such as the ascension of dating apps like Tinder, the female educational hypergamy.
God damn, bro, this graph just like it never. So, bro, wait a minute, bro. Look at this shit. So, even straight cave trolls, bare minimum go for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh my gosh. So if you're under a 6 out of 10 in looks, what? Even average guys? 1, 2, 3, 4. What the fuck? Bro, that is fucked. Even average guys don't stand a chance with the ugliest chicks on earth? Nah, this shit can't be right, bro. This shit can't be right.
Being impossible in a world where women are, on average, more educated than men, the collapse of traditional culture.
But honestly, man, I'm sorry for pausing this so much so early, but what does that mean? Just because they have a fucking bullshit ass degree, they're more educated? Bro, honestly, the dumbest people I've ever met went to college, bro. Real life. Like, at the end of the day, like, there's so many people that could be such book smart, but when it comes to actually some common sense in the real world, they're fucking clueless. So I don't know what more educated really means, bro, because it's not like our education system really teaches you any fucking thing that's applicable to fucking real life. So what does it fucking matter? Real life.
Cultural norms connected to Christianity, and so on. All of these are surely very significant influences. After all, such a massive social change is undoubtedly a multi-factor issue. However, in this video, I want to look at the issue from a more purely demographic perspective. Very interesting demographic data suggest that a relatively large part of the issue is caused by a simple and pretty obvious, yet often overlooked variable: the sex ratio among the population in the relevant age groups. Women and men increasingly do not live in the same geographic areas, which creates significant sex ratio imbalances. That makes the dating crisis pretty much unavoidable, due to purely mathematical concerns. Okay. Before I get to the nitty-gritty of it all, I want to give a shout-out to my Swedish friend David Lorentzon, who did a lot of research regarding this topic, brought it to my attention, and wanted me to make a video about it. He has a presentation on YouTube on these topics. If you want to watch it, the link is in the description.
Alright, so this is the Western world as in Europe, okay. I mean, same shit, so yeah. Still applicable.
So, let's get to it. The crucial variable is the different occupational and educational orientations of men and women. Women tend to attend colleges significantly more than men, and then tend to predominate in fields such as education.
I guess women just like debt a lot more than men too, huh? Because that's what most of these women are doing by going to college, just accumulating debt, because most of them don't even get fucking degrees that matter. So, crazy.
Healthcare, psychology, sociology, anthropology, government administration, care work, personal assistance, artistic and entertainment professions, or journalism. In comparison, men tend to heavily predominate in fields like construction, carpentry, and the majority of other trades, metalwork, manufacturing, mechanics, engineering, or natural resources extraction. To simplify, women prefer people-oriented jobs. In contrast, men prefer jobs focused on things, on objects. Now, purely from this brief overview, one can see that female occupations have very significant urban bias. Not only are universities logically mostly urban affairs, but most of the occupations are firmly connected to metropolitan service-based economies. Large hospitals or large educational or bureaucratic institutions are, absolutely logically, placed in large cities where they make the most economic and logistical sense. On the other hand, most of the heavily male occupations either do not have any clear bias and can be practiced equally in urban and rural areas, such as construction or trades, or do have a rural bias, such as mining, farming, oil and gas drilling, forestry, and whatnot.
I've always been fascinated with the technology of construction because I own a roofing company and stuff, and I mean, granted, I know the components of how to install a roof and install things, but if you ask me to actually do it myself, probably couldn't do it for you, or I'd do a very shitty job. So I really expect the guys in that field, man. They really they make the world go round, man. So salute to all the construction guys out there. Salute to all the guys all the guys that keep up the infrastructure, master electricians, street sweepers, guys who, the engineering of our roads, all that stuff. Much respect to you guys. And a lot of women tend to look down on these guys, but at the end of the day, if you guys were all to disappear and no one else could replace you, this world would go to shit, and women think they wouldn't be able to do it, bro. So, much respect to you guys.
Manufacturing plants are also usually located outside of the largest urban areas due to factors connected to labor and energy costs and available land. The result of this dichotomy is clear. Women from rural areas tend to heavily migrate into the cities, significantly more than men do, since men have a higher economic ability to make a living outside of metropolitan service-based economies. That, however, creates an issue in the form of unbalanced sex ratios, with male surpluses in rural areas. Now, one has to take into account that all around the world, purely naturally, more male babies than female babies are born. The reasons for this biological phenomenon are not entirely clear, but they are not really important to the subject.
Wait. The sex ratio at birth is measured as the number of newborn boys for every 100 newborn girls. Did he say there's more male babies born than females? Let me run that back.
Count that all around the world, purely naturally, more male babies than female babies are born. The reasons for this biological phenomenon are not entirely clear, but they are not really important to the subject of this video. But it is a fact that in Western countries, for every 100 female babies, 105 male babies are born. So there is
very
a
slight,
male
very
surplus
slight,
in
very
every
slight.
population among its younger age cohorts. This
That,
male surplus
that doesn't
tends
really,
to-
that doesn't really help. That's already downhill. So there's more men than women, more men than there's women to go around. And I actually heard a statistic like, damn near like every woman in throughout time is reproduced, and I believe it was actually I don't know. Let's see. What percentage of men, hold up. What percentage of men have reproduced throughout history? Men live a much harder life than women. Men are constantly rejected throughout history. Only 40% of men in existence have reproduced, while 80% of women have. Proof's in the pudding. Right there. So, there you have it. 40-80. So only 40% of men have reproduced in history.
Between 40 and 60 years of age in most countries.
That's wild, bro.
Where the higher male mortality rates tend to overwhelm the sex ratios at birth and migratory trends. In the older age brackets, women tend to predominate, often heavily. However, In the age brackets relevant for mating, gender imbalance remained a significant issue. In the past, significant male mortality rates usually took care of these surpluses. But that is not the case in the contemporary developed world. Almost everyone survives up to an old age, and the cumulative surplus of males in the age brackets relevant to mating is thus often quite significant. The issue is clearly revealed to us when we look at the data. Here is a map of EU regions from 2016, showing the sex ratio among the 20 to 33 age bracket, which is the most relevant one for mating. When you examine the map, you can clearly see large metropolitan areas, such as capital cities, having a female surplus in this age category. Other than that, the vast majority of areas have a male surplus of various intensities, most often up to 10%. 10% is quite a lot. In an area with 2 million inhabitants, a 10% difference means 200,000 more men than women.
Damn.
You can also see certain clear hotspots of heavy male surpluses, most notably in ex-East Germany or rural Sweden and Finland. The male surplus in these areas...
I'm curious to see what the segregation of the sexes and, I guess the ratio of what that would be in America. Curious. I don't know.
Often reaches 20%, which is basically a Chinese level. East Germany is an area with low population density, so there are not a lot of large cities, from which mass emigration to the western part of the country occurred. As we can see, this emigration had a big female bias. But the whole of Germany is very badly affected by this issue. Interestingly, a bunch of countries seem to be in a better position, with larger numbers of females among this age cohort, specifically France, the UK and Ireland. France and the United Kingdom are among the countries where the overall immigration has a female surplus. That can be possibly explained by the large number of international students at the local educational facilities. In the UK, the proportion of female international students was 55%. In Ireland, it was 54%, and in France, it was 53%. I have not found this statistic in Germany. However, since the most common fields of study for international students in Germany are engineering, manufacturing, and construction, it can be presumed that there is a male bias. However, other factors explaining these female surpluses are surely relevant as well. Do not worry. I will mention the influence of international immigration in the next chapter. Now, this is somewhat anecdotal evidence, but I checked some EU report on the issues of incels in the European Union.
Where's the United States at? Oh yeah, this is just Europe.
I checked the countries of origin of users of some incel forums. You can immediately see that the order of countries does not precisely follow the population numbers. By far most of the users were from Germany, 3 times more than from the UK, even though Germany has only 20% more people than the UK. France, even though it has the same population as the UK, was in 7th place, lower than Poland or the Netherlands. Now, once again, I am aware that other factors most likely play a role. In the case of France, it may be a language thing, where they have their own forums where they complain in French. But it is interesting nevertheless, especially considering that Sweden, a country where the issue of unbalanced sex ratio is very pronounced, is in 3rd place, even though it has only 10 million people. Once again, language might be a factor. Swedes are known for their fluent English. Nevertheless, there are more than 5 times more Swedes than Irish on the forum, even though the Irish have half the population and are native English speakers. So, the sex ratios in these countries certainly might play a role. To stay in Scandinavia, here is a map showing the male surpluses in different Scandinavian regions. As you can see, the issue is prevalent in regions outside larger urban areas. We can now move across the Atlantic Ocean to examine the situation in North America. Now, I could not find any age-specific sex ratio data for the United States, which is a bummer. But the US Census Bureau just does not provide such data. So, we can only look at the overall population sex ratio, without insight into the situation in the age brackets relevant to mating. However, even on the whole population, we can see a clear correlation between male-biased sex ratios and population density, and thus the rural and urban divide. Most counties in the part of the United States west of the Mississippi River have a clearly visible male surplus. If you consider that among the age groups over 60 or so, there is almost certainly a significant female surplus even there, it means that the male surplus in the younger age brackets must be very significant. I have also found a map showing the sex ratio in major metropolitan areas in the United States. Here, the results are more varied than...
Hold up, most male percentage? Holy shit. Colorado Springs, Colorado. Fuck. I'm in Denver, Colorado, so I'm just like, damn. Fayetteville, North Carolina. Crazy. I used to live there too. And I kind of used to live in Virginia Beach. What the fuck? Why am I in the most male percentage places? All right, bet that's it on the list, but that's
in Europe, since many metropolitan areas in the western half of the United States have male surplus. However, here we can observe a pretty strong correlation with military bases being present in these metropolitan areas.
right.
In Canada, there is also no data on the sex ratio in the most relevant age groups. However, the sex ratios for the population aged 18 to 64 also reveal a clear trend of male surplus in the less metropolitan regions, with a higher share of extractive industries in the economy. Moreover, there is a fascinating study researching the characteristics of areas in the US where inceldom seems to be more prevalent. The researchers analyzed millions of tweets that somehow revolved around issues connected to incel stuff and found out that the best geographic predictors were a combination of demographic male surplus in the area, low percentage of single women, and economic inequality. So, these sex ratio imbalances ending in divorce is between 10 and 15.
So duration of marriages ending in divorce. Okay. Let's look at this graph. So on average, actually, he got to explain this graph a little bit because I'm not too sure what's going on here. So before I start yapping,
or serious long-term relationships in general do not last that long nowadays. The average length of a marriage ending in divorce is between 10 and 15 years in Western countries, and the divorce rate is somewhere between 40 and 50%. However, there is a significant gap in remarriage between men and women. Older men tend to remarry significantly more than older women. While this likely has multiple reasons, it is at least partially caused by the fact that it is significantly easier for somewhat older men to remarry and have a new family with another, often younger women. It is definitely not uncommon to see men being so-called
Okay, so that makes sense, man. Men have it hard up front, but on the back end as they get older, I feel like things do get easier. Things get better over time, and plus they're probably able still to have kids after a certain age too. But women, they got their peak is short, fast, in a hurry. Don't fuck it up. They're giving everything up front in life, you know what I mean? Like so not some obviously, attractive women, but even unattractive women, bro, they have much easier lives than men on that, like the average man.
The generation fathers.
At least in this regard.
Where they have one set of children with one woman, and then a second set of children with a second woman later, often a younger one, especially if the men are economically successful and thus desirable. These younger women is then not getting into relationship with a man of her age, thus further enhancing the sex ratio imbalance. In countries with low fertility and thus a significant decline in births from generation to generation, there is also another issue. Generally, women tend to prefer slightly older men, and vice versa. Men prefer somewhat younger women. Well, if you look at the population pyramids of countries like Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Poland, Italy, or many others, you can see that the population decline itself presents an issue, since you have significantly more people in the 30 to 40 age brackets than in the 20 to 30 age bracket. That means that, once again, more men compete for fewer women. If you add all these factors up, the natural sex ratio imbalance caused by biology, and the fact that this imbalance is nowadays accumulating over most of the age brackets relevant for mating due to historically super low mortality rates for males, the geographic disparity in where men and women tend to concentrate due to the different economic and educational preferences, the fact that a lot of marriages end in divorce, and past a certain age, it is significantly easier for men to remarry and have a new family than for women, and the fact that in countries with low birth rates and declining populations, there are just significantly more people.
Then okay, but well, with that logic, then why do I know it's older, but there's a lot of older women that still initiate divorces and stuff. So, by that logic, are they initiating divorces to just ride the carousel as an old woman? Like, that doesn't make sense, bro. Like, why do women initiate divorces if it's harder for them to remarry? I don't buy that. Okay, maybe older women, yeah, I can see that, because who the fuck wants an older woman, bro? It's just true, you know what I mean? But like, even older women do that bullshit though. So do they not, maybe think that guys aren't really looking to take an old woman seriously, an old washed up woman who's been married and divorced seriously? Like, do they think that far? Wow.
Then in younger generations, the result is clear. Even if we do not get into all the cultural and technological stuff,
and this is
like
the juicy
dating
part.
apps and hypergamy and weaker monogamist culture norms, and focus purely on the population numbers, some form of dating or mating crisis was pretty much inevitable. You can ban Tinder all you want and return to strict monogamist norms or whatnot, but in many of these areas, the women just physically ain't there. Now we can proceed to the issue of international immigration. I have already covered this in my video on Sweden, but I think this issue is very interesting and deserves a more thorough description. One of the most interesting things that my friend David found out when researching this issue is that while mass immigration into Europe or Sweden is, in the popular consciousness formed by media coverage, usually perceived as being heavily male-dominated, the overall immigration statistics are relatively gender-balanced. With the exception of the UK, there is usually a slight male surplus, but nothing drastic. For example, 52 to 48% in favor of male immigrants. So, international immigration is an additional factor, making the already existing sex ratio imbalance even worse. But it is not as large of a factor as many people likely think it is, especially considering that most immigrants migrate to large urban centers that generally have a female surplus in the relevant age brackets. However, when you look at the data regarding the countries of origin of different immigrants, there are massive differences in sex ratios. Looking at the statistics of countries that actually publicly provide information about the gender and countries of origin of immigrants, for example Sweden, United Kingdom, Germany or Italy, there is a very distinct pattern. There are certain regions of the world from where immigration is heavily male-dominated. Most notably Middle Eastern countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria, Iraq, North African countries, and most of Sub-Saharan Africa. These are the classic migrants who usually come to Europe via the Mediterranean or the Balkan route to claim asylum. This migration is notoriously male-dominated. Other male-dominated source countries of immigration are usually Western countries. In these cases, it is probably caused by more conventional labor migration, possibly often in more male-dominated technical areas. There are no big surprises here. Where it gets more interesting are the female imbalance countries. There is a very diverse and seemingly heterogeneous group of countries from which females heavily dominate the migration. Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, Latin America, China, and so on. In some cases, especially in Southeast Asian nations like Thailand or the Philippines, the number of female immigrants is really overwhelming. Now, why is that the case? The most likely correct answer is that this is a marriage/relationship-induced immigration. Other explanations are surely possible, such as the prevalence of female immigrants in these countries' healthcare or social care systems. Since Filipino workers are the second most prevalent foreign group among workers in the British NHS, this certainly plays a role. However, it is not the whole story, and it is also not entirely mutually exclusive. One can marry a woman who works in healthcare after all. One gets a useful insight when you look into the immigration statistics of places like the Faroe Islands and Svalbard, remote, cold, rural northern islands with very low populations. These places deal with severe sex ratio issues due to the emigration of young women seeking education and employment elsewhere. They are thus a perfect, even though extreme, proxy for the situation of rural, remote regions dealing with these issues. However, it is for sure interesting. The United States does not provide a gender breakdown of immigration from different countries. However, it is for sure interesting.
All right, we get the gist of that section. We're gonna finish off this video with is the future mixed race, which yeah, it's leaning towards that, but there's still a lot of people who are taught to just, kind of marry within their race, especially outside of the United States, in a lot of other countries. Yeah, that whole interracial shit, they not going for that shit, bro. That's just something that's unspoken, but generally speaking, most people do end up dating within their own race. That's just a fact of life, I guess. But when it comes down to pretty much us, it's just really just a numbers. It's just really a numbers game at the end of the day. It's just more women to go around than men, or more men to go around than women, and ultimately with women's hypergamous nature, choosing top tier guys, it's just a lot of guys just going to be left out. So that's ultimately what it is, and pretty much even without dating apps, that would have been the case. So there's more guys that have to compete for women that at the end of the day, those same guys, a lot of them wouldn't even meet the qualifications for those women, even the worst types of women, due to their hypergamous nature, pretty much to break it down. So kind of explains that. And plus, throughout time, if 40% of men only reproduce, even throughout history, bro, before all this shit, it's always been like this. Women have always been hypergamous. Even it's just ultimately like now, it's just the hypergamy's on steroids. Just due to technology, the internet, globalization, and stuff like that. So, let's see.
Similarity between future ethnic composition of the West and Brazil, where the majority of the population is to various degrees ethnically mixed. Throughout the West, there are generally no strong cultural taboos regarding intermarriage in place among the native white majorities. When Western men are facing a dilemma between being unable to find a spouse in their own country or finding a non-European spouse abroad, most men will choose the latter, at least if they have the money to pull it off. While people do have an in-group preference in mating, both cultural and genetic, this preference...
come on, why would you not, bro? Look at that. No offense, white girls, but you ain't competing with that, dog. Just gonna keep it a stack. Probably friendly, feminine, traditional woman, fit, non-argumentative, non-masculine. You can't compete with that.
Or finding a non-European spouse abroad, most men will choose the latter, at least if they have the money to pull it off. While people do have an in-group preference in mating, both cultural and genetic, this preference is by no means rigid in the West. The imperative for reproduction is stronger than the imperative for in-group preference in reproduction. While such immigration flow won't make any news headlines, since there is no crime and upheaval connected to Filipino women marrying Swedish or German men, the cultural impacts will also be notable and interesting. Since these immigration streams usually lead to family formation, the direct cultural and ethnic diffusion is immediate. As I mentioned in many of my videos, the fastest growing ethnic group in most Western countries, at least those that provide such data, is the mixed race group. The continuous trend of Western men being unable to succeed in the mating market with male surpluses making competition even harder, importing women from abroad will surely accelerate these trends.
Wow, that honestly was the clearest breakdown of kind of what's going on, bro. No theory, no mumbo jumbo, bro. That actually scientifically broke down what the fuck's going on. So let's just take a look at the comments. Like that really kind of explained things, man. Okay. It's just pure math, bro. At the end of the day, like it's just there's too many men to go around, especially for women and with their high standards, and most men wouldn't even qualify anyway. So just the competition just outrageous for men, and I guess it's always been that way. Maybe and if it's always been that way throughout history, I guess God is just like just survival of the fittest, right? So technically, if you're not able to reproduce, you're just not good enough, I guess. But honestly, that's also not true because I see some of the most incapable. But it doesn't matter about that. I guess it's just a matter of genetics, right? So, yeah. And just so many. Like when you think about like women have so many options, bro. Like you like the amount of options that women have, bro. You literally have to be their best option, and that's hard to be the best, the very very first option for any women, bro. You know, so. So I guess I'm an incel. Explains why Genghis Khan can convince so many men to fight for him. Who could have thought that upsetting the male to female balance by adding more males would result in problems? Scientifically explaining why it's over for you by yeah, for real. That's pretty much what it is. It's like we're living in a damn socially engineered dystopia. I can confirm. I used to work at a government job in a small village in Morag in Norway that saw an exodus of women quite early because it was smack dab in the middle of two local economic powerhouses. The women moved to those places to study when education became free and either stayed in the city or moved to bigger cities. And yet they keep bringing trucks full of only male refugees for some reason. Yeah, bro, I mean, maybe they're just trying to kill males and just have us die out. Well, my fellow incels, try to enjoy the rest of your day. And at the end of the day, an incel a day keeps the doctor away. Later.